Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Dr. Matthew Levitt. He's the director of the Reinhard Program on Counterterrorism and Intelligence at the Washington Institute. Dr. Levitt, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really grateful to get your perspective here as a counterterrorism expert because concerns over potential terror threats to the United States, both at home and abroad, have intensified as the war in Iran rages on. President Trump was recently asked in an interview with Time if Americans should be worried about Iran retaliating with attacks on U.S. soil, and he said, "I guess." He also added this in part, quote, "We expect some things. Like I said, some people will die." After hearing that, from your perspective, how dangerous of a situation are we in? What are some of those things that the government is expecting to happen?
Look, this is a heightened security environment. There's no sugarcoating that. But it's also the case that FBI and DHS and other federal, state, and local agencies have been preparing for moments like these for a very long time. It's not like all of a sudden we wake up and we've got something to do. So on the one hand, if there were ever a time where Iran on its own or through its proxies, terrorist proxies, criminal proxies, there are several Iranian murder for hire plots that have been thwarted. One is on trial in New York right now. If there's ever a time that they were going to pull out the stops and try and do something, now would be it, right? The United States and Israel are conducting airstrikes against the regime and all of its centers of power. They've killed the supreme leader and a whole bunch of other senior Iranian government officials. To the extent that Iran wants to increase the costs to the United States of continuing to prosecute this war by creating domestic pressure perhaps on the president, one tool might be carrying out domestic terrorist attacks. And so we're concerned about those. We're also concerned about Iranian officials for some time now, again, not new, trying to inspire people, radicalize people, much as Al-Qaeda or ISIS has done on the Sunni extremist side of the equation, here on the Shia extremist side of the equation, radicalizing people to want to do things on their own. And while it's too early to know for sure, authorities are concerned that maybe the shooting we had several days ago in Austin, Texas might have been something like that. The individual was wearing a t-shirt with the flag of Iran under a sweatshirt that said something about Islam, and they're looking into that. Heightened threat, but not reason to be hysterical.
I know more information about that Austin shooting is coming out, but do you think that that's more of a lone wolf attack, or is that more of a network?
In all likelihood, this is going to be a lone wolf or lone offender operation. We won't know more until the details come out. It's possible it was foreign directed, meaning someone operating on their own, someone encouraging them or directing them. It's more likely someone saw what was going on and got very angry. Remember, the supreme leader of Iran was leading a terrorist state. He also was the religious leader, the marja, the source of emulation for some Shia around the world. Not the majority of Shia, but he was for some. And there were people who will be angry about that. At the bottom line is this. We've known for a long time that in the event that the United States and Iran went to war, the likelihood of a terrorist attack would increase significantly. We know this, for example, because of a Lebanese Hezbollah terrorist operative. Lebanese Hezbollah is Iran's primary proxy, who was convicted in New York on terrorism charges years ago. And around 2016, 2017, before he was convicted, he spoke to the FBI and told them about all the surveillance he'd done in New York City and elsewhere and pre-operational planning, and described himself as a sleeper cell. I don't really like the term, it's too Hollywood, but it's how he described himself. And the FBI said to him, "So under what circumstances do you think you might be called upon to act on that pre-operational surveillance?" And he said, "Well, maybe this, maybe that, but definitely if the United States and Iran ever went to war." So we've known for some time that this was kind of a red line, and if it were to happen, we'd have to be prepared. It's not like the war caught us off guard, and so authorities had the opportunity to put things in place to be prepared. There's no such thing as a 100% guarantee of preventing attacks. Counterterrorism officials have to get it right every time. The bad guys have to get it right once. But the good news is authorities really know what they're doing in this space.
I know you said that the term sleeper cell to you is too Hollywood, but there have been concerns that sleeper cells could be activated since this war broke out. What do you make of that? Because can you first explain what people mean when they use the term sleeper cell, and what term would you use if you don't like it?
Look, to me, the term sleeper cell is just too Hollywood. It implies someone who was sent to the United States under deep cover for the express purpose of carrying out attack at some point in the distant future, something like the Americans in the Russia context, but for terrorist purposes. And in the real world, there are terrorist operatives who've been sent to different places, including to the United States, but they tend to be sent here to make money, to provide support, to procure and send dual use items, but they are then also here to be called upon should the terrorist group or the state sponsor, in the case of Iran, want there to be an attack. It doesn't mean that they're highly trained ninjas. More often than not, they're bumbling idiots. But it does mean that they're here, and it does mean that they could succeed. It's very easy to procure a gun in this country. We have a very open society. If a teenager can very easily carry out a shooting in a school, which we've seen over and over, unfortunately can happen, then a terrorist, really committed to doing something similar could probably also succeed, except that they tend to have ties to other terrorists here or abroad, and authorities are able to follow their finances, their communication, their travel patterns, their associates, and more often than not, have some sense of who's doing what before they start trying to carry something out. Not every time, but counterterrorism authorities have got pretty good at what they do in the 20-something years since 9/11.
I know that you said that Hezbollah operative said they would be called upon if there was a direct war between the United States and Iran. We're seeing right now a direct war between the United States and Iran. I'm curious, what would that call upon look like? I mean, who calls that action and how do they get that message?
There's lots of ways for bad actors to communicate in ways that are difficult for us to be aware of. From things like basic encrypted communications, WhatsApp, Signal, that you and I might use for one reason, but they might use because it's an encrypted end-to-end encryption system. Simple systems like, say, you and I both know the login to a Gmail address, and we both check it, every few days, and we never actually send an email. We just leave something in the draft folder. So I leave you a message in the draft folder, you read it, you delete it, you leave me a message in the draft folder. Nothing actually travels through the internet, and so there's nothing to intercept. You can send messages in, false bottoms of bags and a million ways to communicate. Coded messaging on an open phone line. At the end of the day, if someone in a terrorist group abroad or a state sponsor abroad wants to communicate to someone they know here, there's lots and lots of ways to do it. But then they have to do things, they have to engage in behaviors that we have trained ourselves and created systems to be able to identify those types of suspicious behaviors, whether it's someone going and getting a gun, someone procuring chemicals to make an explosive, taking strange amounts of money out of bank accounts or what have you. There are behaviors, and maybe any one or two of those behaviors alone won't set off alarms. It's perfectly legal to buy a gun legally in this country. You're allowed to take more money out of your bank account than you might have done normally, but you're probably going to set off an alert of some sort. And on its own, nothing, but maybe in tandem with other red flags, authorities might have a sense of what's going on. So there are systems in place. Again, heightened threat, but not something that everybody should be worrying about when they walk out the front door tomorrow morning.
I like the way you phrased that there, right? Heightened threat, but that doesn't need to be your concern 24/7. What would it look like, though, or does that remain to be seen? Would that be, like you said, guns are easily accessible in this country? Would it be a shooting? Would it be an explosive planted somewhere? Where would that be? I mean, I know that you don't have the terrorist handbook here, but what do you think that would look like based on your expertise?
There's a wide range of options open to people who want to carry out acts of violence. From taking a knife out of their kitchen to renting a car and hitting someone with it, to a shooting, to a bombing. And so authorities are prepared for all these things. It's harder to identify people who have not come up on the radar before. So in some ways, while they're likely to carry out less spectacular attacks, the lone offender, the lone wolf, is in some ways more of a concern because it's harder to know about them in advance. But their behaviors may set off those tripwires we've put in place. And then while it could be a more spectacular attack. Someone who's part of a group or part of a network, part of a cell, may already have come up on law enforcement or intelligence radar by virtue of being part of something larger, and that's harder to keep under the radar. At the end of the day, the public should not be sitting in front of their television listening to us worried about what might a terrorist do. Could they do this to me? Could they do that to me? There's a wide range of options that bad actors could do. The bigger takeaway is that authorities are aware and authorities are prepared. And I think some people have expressed legitimate concern that there's been people who have left the FBI or been fired from the FBI, including people who were working on Iran and were fired because they were involved in investigations into the president. But overall, the institutional memory is still there, and good people are doing good work trying to keep America safe, especially at a time of heightened threat.
What about cyber attacks, though? I am curious, is that something that the Iranian regime would employ?
Absolutely. In fact, most of the law enforcement warnings that have been issued here in the United States and in Europe, Europol, for example, highlight the cyber threat, not because it's more dangerous, but because it's much more likely. In fact, there have been reports that the Iranian cyber efforts have increased exponentially in the Middle East in particular, but also in the West. These would be denial of service attacks. These would be attacks that would make it difficult for us to access our bank accounts online. But theoretically, the Iranian regime in the past has gotten into, for example, the system of a dam in Pennsylvania, the systems of Boston Children's Hospital. The Iranians don't have the capabilities that we or the Chinese or the Russians or the Israelis have, but they have capabilities enough to be able to do some disruption, and therefore people are aware and very much on top of that. But I don't see that as the same type of threat that an act of terrorism would have. It's more of a disruption of daily life rather than potential casualties.
President Trump hasn't given a deadline for this war. He said 4 to 5 weeks earlier this week. He said we're ahead of schedule earlier this week. He also, though, posted that there's not going to be any deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. So do you think that we could expect the likelihood of a potential attack to go up or down depending on how long this war drags out?
The first thing I would say is to stop trying to read the tea leaves on the administration's various statements, because this administration deals with public statements in a different kind of way than past administrations have. So 2 to 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks, 2 weeks, less, we've heard it all. The bottom line is that the longer the war goes on, the more the regime in Iran feels that this is an existential threat for them, either in the near term or more likely that the United States and Israel will have done so much damage to the regime and its elements of power that it's so weakened that maybe over time in the near to medium future, Iranians will rise up themselves, create a political alternative that, by the way, does not yet exist in Iran. To the extent they feel that there's an existential threat to their revolution, they will want to carry out attacks against their perceived enemies. But that has a tail as well. It's not like the threat ends when the war ends. And so we're likely to see a spike in international terrorist threats from Iran and its proxies, but also from others, including those who hate Iran. Al-Qaeda and ISIS, they have nothing nice to say about Iran. But when one bad actor successfully carries out a plot against a shared enemy, they all get excited. Right-wing extremists who hate Muslims were very excited when Islamic State carried out an attack as the United States withdrew from Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda, which hates Hamas, was very excited on October 7th. Far left and far right activists in the West were very excited over October 7th, though they don't really care for the Palestinians. Here too, a war with Iran is likely to activate more people who see terrorism against the West as something they want to do, and that won't necessarily end when the war ends.
I know you said the threat of an attack is heightened, but people don't need to walk out of their house and be extra concerned, be scared that a terrorist attack is going to happen right outside of their door because the government has handled this type of thing before. Do you think that the American people need to prepare at all? Do they need to do anything or just continue living their normal lives as of now?
I tell people not to stop what they're doing, to go ahead and live their life, but to be vigilant. That's all we can ask of one another. The benefits of living in an open society are that we have this fantastic life. The vulnerability is that bad actors can take advantage of it. So we should do what we can to mitigate the threat, and we should go about living our lives.
Do you think that there's anything missing then from this conversation? You're the expert here, and I'm grateful for you, like I said before, for coming on, because I'm scrolling through social media and I'm seeing video after video of sleeper cell, what's this, what's that, the potential for an attack. And that's getting inundated in so many other people's feeds. I mean, what do you think's missing then from this whole dialogue on the heightened threat here?
Look, I think that the media, with respect, loves terms like sleeper cells because they know it'll get clicks. On the flip side, it has the potential of sending people into a doom scrolling rabbit hole. And so my message is very simple. We are at a heightened threat. Authorities are well aware and very much on top of it. So be vigilant and be aware and live your life. And more than that, we can't ask ourselves. There is a heightened threat. There's no question. We're at war with the state sponsor of terrorism. If you think that they won't employ terrorism, you haven't understood what this regime has been about for 47 years. But it doesn't mean that they'll succeed. It doesn't mean that they're black belt ninjas who can do anything at any time. It's not the case at all. You can see behind me, I have Red Sox things on the wall. There's good and there's evil in the world. In my book, the Red Sox are good and the Yankees are evil. But however you define it, it's there. Don't let it define your life.
Well, I'm in New York, so I think the Yankees certainly are good, although I am a Phillies fan myself. Dr. Levitt, thank you so much for joining me. You are welcome back anytime.
Thank you so much.